Today I am sharing some charcoal drawing tips and updating you on the new fish I got for my reef tank. For as little as $4 a month, you can help feed a hungry fish. Well, that can get access to my over 300 painting and drawing lessons. Look at that sad, hungry face that just ate 5 minutes ago. So much hungry. Off to buy more food for these pigs. No, I have enough mouths to feed. You guys stay here. Look at all those frozen foods. That one right there, fish candy. It's like crack for fish. They only get it as a treat once a week. Look at the huge variety. Get one of these. Definitely need some more mysis. This is Brandon. He's about to take all my dollars for this fish food. And then he uses all those dollars for his mini-me's food. The circle of food dollars. I mean, it looks tasty to me. And this is why I'm going through food so much faster. 2 weeks ago, I got my order of fish from Dr. Reef. He quarantined all of my new fish for me, treating them for potential ick, velvet, brooklynella, and internal parasites. He also makes sure the fish are eating really well before he sends them to you. It's a pretty big deal when it comes to fish. First, I need to get them acclimated to my tank's temperature. The fish arrived in a much lower salinity than what my tank is, so I needed to raise the salinity from about 1.018 to 1.024. This took about an hour, and then they were able to get set free. I got a citron goby. Actually, I ordered a yellow clown goby, but I mean, yellow Fred here is yellow and a clown goby, so close enough. He might eat my frog spawn when it gets moved over though, so I'll have to watch him. These guys can be a little iffy when it comes to certain LPS. If he does end up having a bit of an attitude, I can either leave my frog spawn in my coral quarantine tank, or I can move this guy into one of my other tanks. Either way, I adore him and he stays. He's got so much character. I also got 2 purple firefish that may or may not work out their differences. We'll have to wait and see. It's possible one of these guys will go live in one of my other tanks along with that citron goby if it becomes an issue. I got a tail spot Blenny, who is one of my absolute favorite fish. He backs up into rocks and sticks his head out to watch everyone, or chase them away from his rock. He also eats algae off the rock as an added bonus. I got a royal grama who mostly hides, but before the lights come on, he likes to start crap with the firefish and tail spot. Kids, get along. Don't make me pull this car over. I got a green clown goby. This guy is a little bit smaller than the citron goby. He doesn't have quite as much personality as the citron goby, but he is still adorable. 2 weeks later, and everyone except the Bang-Eye Cardinal has done amazing. So I got a Bang-Eye Cardinal too. The thing is, these guys are prone to a virus that I suspect mine had. He ate, but not as well as the other fish. And then yesterday, he just randomly started breathing heavily. And then within hours of that, and he had looked fine, like completely fine before this, and he had passed. Unfortunately, that virus has no cure or treatment from what I've looked up. And in case that was the issue, I'm not going to get any more of those guys. I don't want to risk another fish getting it now that I've had it in my tank. Honestly, I'm hoping that that was the cause of what happened, because then there isn't a chance of my other fish getting it, given that everybody else is still perfect and he had no visible signs of issue prior to the heavy breathing hours before. I'm really leaning towards that conclusion. Time will tell, though. I will be watching my other fish closely. So far, everyone looks perfect. If you're an art member over at Patreon, make sure to head over where you've got the real-time lesson for this lion. If you are unfamiliar with Patreon, for as little as $4 a month, you get access to all of my longer tutorials. I have a new one every week and over 300 for you to watch immediately when you sign up. If you want to check out my Patreon video library, I just updated that with a bunch of new stuff, so you can check that out. I will put a link in the video description. For this one, I am working on the rough side of the Canson Me Tans pastel paper. I don't like to freehand on this paper because I'm going to have eraser marks and smudges everywhere. So I draw everything out first on another piece of paper or digitally with Photoshop, and then I'll use a projector to transfer that image cleanly onto the paper. That keeps the gray background perfectly clean, no smudges from me doing erasing or anything like that. That's all done separately on another piece of paper. So now that that is cleanly sketched out onto this one, I can go ahead and start in with the shading. And this is what will take it from looking like a messy sketch into something that's more like a black and white photo. So with the eye, here's a huge tip for you. When you draw eyes, notice the shadow on the upper part of the iris. Don't just make the iris the same color top to bottom. It'll look like the subject is staring at you. If it's an owl or a snake, some animals that may work, but for most, that upper eyelid is going to cause a shadow. So notice on that eye how it fades from dark at the top. It's just as dark in that shadow as the pupil. And then you get the highlight down towards the bottom of the iris. As I draw this in, I'm just using a General's white charcoal pencil and then the General's black pencils in a mixture of soft, hard, and medium. You can get away with just the soft if you want. It's actually very inexpensive to get a packet of all four. I will put a link in the video description. It's one of the cheapest mediums to get started in, and it's great because it really lets you focus on your values, and it's one of the fastest mediums to work in. So something like this, if I were to do this in colored pencil or acrylic painting, I'm going to spend a few days on it. With this, I'm going to spend a few hours. It's very, very fast to work in charcoal. So if you're new to art in general, this would be one of the first mediums I would recommend you to start with. And this is great also if you want to get started in portraits. I'll have a lesson for that coming up pretty soon in this medium. But it's easy because mainly it's very forgiving. Maybe I should say forgiving, less so than easy. You can fix mistakes very, very easily in this medium. So if you realize, oh my gosh, the eye's a little too wide or whatever, random thoughts, but you can easily go back and layer over that and change it. So I want to make sure that the direction of my fur is going in about the right direction. I want to look at the reference photo, make sure it's about the same. I don't need each individual strand of fur to be exact, and I don't need to try to draw in the same. I'm not sitting there looking at the reference photo thinking, okay, 15 strands of fur going this direction, 14 going that direction. You don't need to be that exact. You just need to make sure that that fur is about the right length, going in about the right direction. I do want to make sure that the eyes are in the right place. I want to be more exact with that. The nose, the mouth, the ears, all of that needs to be exact. But as far as the individual clumps of fur, you can be a bit off on that as long as you're close. I mean, if the wind blows, the fur shifts anyway. As long as you're close, you're still going to have a very realistic piece. One of the problems that a lot of new artists have is making their work look realistic or three-dimensional. And they get hung up on this idea that if I just knew what color the other artist is using, my work would look realistic too. No, the color really doesn't have anything to do with that, and this proves it. It comes back to your values. Are your darks dark enough and your lights light enough? That's what's going to make the difference in your work looking three-dimensional. And working in black and white, working in charcoal, this is a great way to practice that. If you're working on an area and your light area doesn't feel like it's light enough, or your dark area feels like I just can't get it dark enough, it's just not standing out enough, usually that's because the area next to it is not light or dark enough. So let's say my light area doesn't look light enough. Then the dark area next to it, make that darker, and that will make your bright areas appear brighter. And then of course the reverse. If your dark areas aren't dark enough, make the light area next to it lighter. And these pencils layer so well. I really never hit a point where I can't get more layers, but one of the things that you can do as you work is spray a fixative over this as you layer. I like SpectraFix. I put it into a fine mist sprayer, and I'll put a link to those products in the video description, but I like to put that in a fine mist sprayer and just lightly mist over, and it will seal down some of those previous layers. And then of course I will go over everything lightly with it again at the end. I like the fine mist sprayer because it prevents you from having very heavy droplets of the fixative come out like what you would get if you used the bottle that it comes in. When you draw these individual strands of fur, make sure that they're clumping together, and you'll get a lot of overlapping too. It's not just random confetti everywhere. So I've got to make the inside of that ear dark so that I can put these strands of fur on top of them. There we go. Now that white shows up really well. Now this is why I needed to make the inside of the ear dark first. Otherwise I'd be trying to bring the dark in between each of those little strands of white fur, and that would make things much harder than it needed to be. That blending tool or blending stump that I'm using there is really handy, but you can use anything. When I first started with charcoal, I used to take a piece of paper towel wrapped around my finger and use that to blend. The paper under my hand, that is called glassine, and that is a pretty important thing to do. Make sure you've got something under your hand. I prefer glassine because nothing sticks to it. I used to use a piece of tracing paper or just another piece of paper. The problem is if a little bit of charcoal gets under the paper there, it can stick to the glassine or that paper, and when you slide it over, it can leave a mark on your paper. And in this case, where I want that background to stay clean, that would be an issue. With the glassine, nothing sticks to it. It's also acid-free, so that's, added bonus there. But I can rest my hand on that. It keeps the oils from my skin off the work. It keeps me from smudging the work. And I just tape it to my drawing board and slide it around as I need to. My lion is taped down to my board to keep it from sliding around with a pH neutral masking tape. That's the black tape that you see there. If you tape your work down and you have a hard time removing it without tearing the paper, take a hairdryer to that tape, let it warm up, and then slowly pull it away from your work. Never pull the tape towards your work when you remove it, because if the paper does start to tear, you don't want it tearing in, you want it tearing out. But if you heat it up with a hairdryer, that should loosen that adhesive up enough that it will come off easily. But tear it off slowly and away from the artwork every time. You also don't want to leave the tape on the artwork for any longer than needed. It's very easy to get something like this drawn out, you're finished, and you just put it to the side, leaving it taped to the board. Get that tape off as soon as possible. The longer you leave it there, the harder it's going to be to remove. As I go through here, you can see I'll layer in my dark areas, blend that out, and then I put the white right on top. If I want an area to be more gray, let the white and the black pencil mix together more. Blend those in a bit more. And one of the things that you're going to have to watch is that you don't overblend. Charcoal blends so easily, it's really easy to make a few blending strokes and think, wow, this looks great, so 500 must look better. No, don't do that. You lose all your definite lights and darks and shapes. You just end up with a blurred, muddy mess. So just a few blending strokes should be enough in most cases. And I'm not pushing it very hard. You really don't need to push hard with any of your blending tools. Or the pencils. I don't have to add much pressure with these. Notice as I work, I'll work on one small chunk at a time. I don't want to jump all over where I'm working on the face and the mane and the ear. And I'm not doing everything at the same time. It gets too overwhelming. When I was younger, when I first started with art, that was definitely how I tried to work, and my work wasn't as realistic. I found when I break things up into smaller chunks and just focus on a little area, look at it more as an abstract shape. So as I'm working on the mane there, I'm not looking at it and thinking, I'm drawing a lion mane. Your brain has a tendency to want to take over, and it doesn't end up looking like a lion's mane. So look closer at the reference photo and just kind of zoom in on that one area you're really focused on, start to finish. You can go back and do touch-ups as necessary later on, but really try to get it done, start to finish, into smaller chunks. So like if you went back in the beginning, I worked just on the eye and then worked my way around and really focused on those areas. And if it gets to where it's very overwhelming and you start to have a hard time focusing on the idea of an abstract shape, flip your artwork and your reference photo upside down. It will force your brain to see the shapes as they are and not how it thinks a mane should look or an eye should look. Our brain likes to try to override what our eye sees. Don't let it do that. Some final strands here. Now, as I get to the end, I will back away from the piece and decide, do I need something to be a little bit lighter, a little bit darker, and I can make adjustments as needed then. But make sure you take that step away from your art, because if you sit here too long, this close looking at it, sometimes you don't notice that something's a little too dark or a little too light, and it's such an easy fix. You just layer right over it. Layer until it looks good. A few tiny little individual strands there. Of course, the whiskers. And then I will spray everything very, very lightly. I can't stress that enough, very lightly with the Spectrafix. Now, one of the things that I like with the Spectrafix, I feel like it doesn't make the white areas a lot darker. And I have used fixatives in the past that when you put the spray over it, it did darken up the whites. Now, if it does darken anything up, you can go right back over them. But with the Spectrafix, I've really not had an issue with that. And don't forget, if you want to follow along with the real-time version of this, you can head over to Patreon. The link is in the video description.
I sit. I sit. I'm bored. Nope. I sit again. I'm up. I sit. Now I sit here. I stay. Trick 2. I moved. I sit.
Have you subscribed yet? If not, I have a handy button right there. It's round, has an orange arrow going towards it. If you click on that, that'll help you to keep up to date with all of my new art videos every single week. Don't forget to click on the bell notification icon because YouTube is terrible about notifying people when new I can't talk. When new videos go up, maybe they would recommend me if I learned to talk. Also, you can sign up for my email newsletter. I send out one email once a week with updates on whatever videos went live and the upcoming live streams.